Is that fine? Can you hear me? Just put that back a bit. So far, I have survived 7.5 decades. And is that fine?
Make it
A
easier
bit
for
high?
you. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, so thank you for the previous wonderful stories that we've already heard, and thank you, Mandy and the amazing girls from Shift, for pulling this together. A truly wonderful evening and a sellout, even though it's so close to silly season and everyone had things to do. So fantastic. So I'm just going to run through, it's going to take me 5 minutes, and I'm going to run through 7 decades really fast. Okay, so my first decade and 1.5 decades was pretty breezy, really. Small Queensland country town upbringing, basketball, pony club, tadpoling down the range. 17 to 20, I moved to Canberra to do a nursing degree, and I discovered drugs, sex, and rock and roll, which was the same time as the moratorium and Out Now and Vietnam. And I discovered activism and just being a cool kid, I guess, between 17 and 20. 20 to 25, I went overseas, and I had a sort of 6-year odyssey. I did 2 postgrad nursing degrees in London while I was backpacking around Europe on the weekends and bartending and doing whatever jobs that I actually could, like most of my age, my generation were doing at that time, when it was actually cheap and safe to travel. And they loved Australians over there, and you could get a job basically doing everything, doing anything at all. So one of my degrees was working in the East End of London in Leytonstone Hospital in the emergency department, and it was really, really tough in that hospital. And I thought that anything that I would do after that would be easy. And I was wrong, but it set me up really well for the nursing jobs that I did following that. So those years in London were fantastic. I did what, again, my generation did. I took lots of acid in Hyde Park because it was Ken Kesey and Lucy in the Skies with Diamonds, and the hell's, why not? Everyone else is doing it. I survived that. Okay, I think I survived. Maybe not. Anyway, I sort of figure I might have survived it. And then after that, I drove a 1952 Ford Anglia from London to Burma at the time, which was gifted to me by a South African boyfriend of mine who just got through his exams, and it was given to me. And it had rusted fenders all the way through, which I had put, you know, that paper that you used to stick in kitchen drawers, that floral contact paper? So I stuck that over all the rust so you couldn't see through to the engine. And 4 of us, and one of the guys was actually a mechanic that was in the car, we drove all the way right across the south of Afghanistan, through Pakistan, Iran. You wouldn't be able to do that now, or through all the poppy fields. That was fantastic, except that we did forget that there was a matchbook box full of hash that was in the glove box, which we got busted going across the Pakistani border. Now, we were going to get shot, but I actually had $100 US stuck in my bra that I'd had for 6 years of travelling for just such an occasion. Whoa. Survived that one. And the trip, 20,000 kilometres without even a flat tyre. So that was pretty good. Came back to Australia in 1976 and married a cowboy from the Kimberley. True story. I survived 25 years of marriage, most of which were really good. It was a good life. It was an interesting life, and as I said, most of marriage was good. And I survived 20 years of working for Kerry Packer, who owned the cattle property that we were working on. So that was always interesting and sometimes intense. But I survived that as well. So I survived my divorce. I left him and the bush, and then survived the betrayal of the man that I left my marriage for, which I had thought was the love of my life, and I was wrong. So I spent the next 10 years living in Brisbane. That's from 50 to 60, living in Brisbane doing volunteer work for Médecins Sans Frontières. In Sudan, in Sierra Leone, a year in Bhutan, outreach work in Cambodia, Laos, throughout Asia. I was sort of coming and going for those 10 years doing volunteer work because I could and because I really enjoyed it and because the children were all off the books. What I didn't say earlier on was I also survived bringing up 7 children. I had 2 stepchildren. My sister says I've got to call him my first husband, not my ex-husband. She said that's you've got to say first husband. Well, I haven't wanted to find a second one. But he is my first husband. So sadly his first wife died, so I inherited 2 stepchildren when they were 7 and 8, fostered 2 Indigenous children, and then I gave birth to 3 more, and which is why I'm very tired. So, where am I? I left him, the divorce, got that. Love of life, no, wasn't right about that. 10 years volunteer work in war zones. Well, I survived that, and that was one of life's most wonderful experiences, frightening at times, but still a really, really worthwhile. Then when I came back to Australia, I had a sea change and moved to Byron Bay, which is basically my forever home. And I mean, tonight, looking out over the golf links here, this beautiful, beautiful town that we live in, I wake up every morning and I just feel so utterly blessed to be living in this safe and marvellous microcosm surrounded by wonderful people. I survived working for 2 years on the front line during COVID. They dug out all the old nurses out of the woodwork. And so for 2 years I was testing and injecting in Ballina, and most of that was in a zoot suit, and most of the time I couldn't breathe. But it was lockdown, and during that time I wrote a memoir, which I have published and spent 2 years touring post-COVID. So I survived COVID and I survived the memoir, and I still have a family who still love me despite what I said about them. I survived, or I am surviving, estrangement from my oldest birth son and the recent death of his newborn baby, not being part of the lives of him or his 2 other children. I survived the death of my oldest stepson from a tumour in June of this year. I am surviving being the linchpin and the can-do, go-to person and granny duty performer of my extended family, though surely I'll be able to hand that baton across soon because I'm getting really old. We're all surviving now. Environmental carnage, extreme weather events, climate change, AI, misinformation, and loss of trust in the media and the system. Trump, for fuck's sake. Gaza, Ukraine, Sudan, so many wars. But here we all are, thanks to people like Mandy and so many others here tonight who are working for worthwhile projects like Shift to help people in need, to make a difference. That's true survival. against the odds. People who care, helping people who need it. I was going to tell you a story tonight about one of the plane crashes I survived during my 25 years in the bush, but you'll have to read my book to get that one now. Or alternatively, I also have recorded an audio book which is free on Spotify if you've got the premium one. So there's a few plane crashes on that. But huge admiration to everyone for being here, because we are all people who are helping and trying to make a difference in the world as we see it. Woo! Yay!